Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new, hi, welcome. My name is Jeff. I'm an artist, illustrator, and maker. And I'm doing a little bit of a different video again today, trying something new. And I'm going to be sharing with you some tips, learnings, benefits, little nuggets of wisdom that I've learned from the process of starting to document my artworks over the past 2.5 years for my own creative practice and then also for YouTube. Instead of just having me talking to the camera and you're just looking at my face the whole time, I decided it would be fitting if I showed you some documentation of my art at the same time. So the plan is that I'm going to be showing you a new artwork that I'm painting in the studio. I also have my notes in front of me because I wanted to make sure that I don't forget anything. So if you see me looking down, it's just because I have my phone. And I'm just gonna find the section. I'm also chasing the sunlight. I'm sitting on my couch. It's daylight saving, so hopefully the sun won't go down too much by the time that I finish talking. All right, let's get into it. So the context of how I used to feel about documenting my artworks is probably something that a lot of people can relate to. I hated documenting my artworks. And when I say documentation, I mean taking photos on my phone, taking time-lapse videos on my phone, trying to capture the process, me in the studio painting or making, going out if I'm doing an exhibition and taking photos or videos at the exhibition, just like capturing the whole process of making the artwork. So I used to hate that process. The idea of having to get the right camera, the right lights, making sure there's natural light, making sure my desk is the right way, the right angles, all of those things just became massive hurdles that in my mind, and also physically because I didn't own a lot of, I didn't have a good studio space, I didn't have equipment or anything like that. And it became this massive block that kept on getting in the way. And I also would always say to myself as well that I didn't want to be breaking my creative flow to stop to take a photo of an artwork or a stage of the process. And I felt that it was really like against creative flow, and that it was really like detrimental to the creative process. So it just meant that I would start documenting my artworks and then I would just stop, or I just wouldn't even bother at all. And I'd always get to the point where I would say, damn it, I wish I had a photo or video of this artwork, or I never took a photo before I sold it to someone or before I took it to market. And it was just like a really crappy position to constantly be in. And I knew I had to like change the way that I was going about this. And yes, while I do agree that that opinion and that feeling is valid, I think to some degree it obviously does impact your creative flow when you stop to take a photo or to change the angle of the camera. But for me, it's something that is much more beneficial than not doing it. And reflecting on my documentation strategy, which I'm going to be sharing with you, and also just looking back on the last 2.5 years of actually using this strategy to document my artworks, I can see that that outweighs the thought of it breaking and blocking my creative flow. It totally is much more important for me to take those photos and to move the camera and that kind of thing. And with every video that I take of my artworks, the quicker and more efficient my process is, because I start to learn particular angles that are great and setups. And if I don't try things, I'm not going to get better at it as well. The other part of that thinking of it's just not going to work and it's not worth documenting is that when I really think about it, I was constantly being reactive and I was chasing the algorithm, really. I was in the mindset that I always had to find new things to post on social media, mainly Instagram. And because I didn't have any content and I didn't have a strategy, I was then always trying to think of things on the fly, or realize I hadn't posted anything for a month. And so I just take photos of whatever I had. And that is a real sort of like hustle culture approach to it and like scarcity mindset, and very much about reacting rather than being proactive. And I also do totally accept and understand that now I have a lot more camera gear and equipment that helps me to document my artworks. When I first made the decision that I was going to start to take more time to do this, it was 2.5 years ago, and I was just using my phone, and I've got a really old iPhone, so it doesn't really do like great quality videos and photos. My microphone's broken on my phone, so everything's just kind of muffled. But over the 2.5 years, I've slowly started to get equipment and gear and try things and do a lot of research into like what is adequate gear for me and what I really do and don't need, and asking a lot of my friends who use cameras and lighting and all that kind of thing, their advice on what they think I would need, and slowly building up my kit of gear that is obviously making it so much easier for me to film and document everything. But it's something that I didn't just go out and just buy everything at the first 2 seconds. I'm evolving the kit as we go, and there's more things I'd like to be able to get as time goes on. But yes, I do understand that will always make it easier if you can have 2 cameras to set up to film you at the same time. But if you go back to my very first videos, I wasn't doing that, and you can see the process of how my videos have gotten better. So this idea of wanting to be more proactive about the way that I document my artworks was the real key driver for me creating a strategy. I realized I had no purpose in what I was doing, or no like intention to what I was trying to capture. And so I knew I had to develop a strategy. And so let's go through that right now. In my strategy, there was 2 main things I had to think about. It was what I had to change in what I was currently doing, and what did I want to achieve with my new approach. So when I thought about it, I had to go back to the very core of how I break down my arts practice, and that's with the hats that I wear. So I've spoken about this in the past, but the way I like to break down my sort of creative career, creative existence, is I've got 3 main hats. There's Jeff the person, Jeff the creative, and Jeff the business person. So Jeff the person is obviously me as a human who just needs to live their life and exist. There's creative Jeff, who is the person who wants to paint and draw and make and create things. And then there's the business side that is obviously the part of me that has to think strategically and professionally about how I want to use my art to create a living full time, and sort of what that looks like in terms of success, and what my day-to-day is, and if I'm a full-time freelancer or a part-timer and all that kind of thing, everything in the business side that goes into it. So I knew I had to really think about those 3 hats for documenting my artwork. And the reason is that to have like work-life balance, for me, I really have to be considering all of those 3 aspects of my life. And if I really neglect one of them, it tends to mean that I'm either overworking or neglecting my friends and family, or not feeling like creatively inspired or experiencing creative block, because I'm kind of neglecting one aspect of it. And all those 3 hats work together to make my existence in some way, I guess. And I've been a full-time freelancer for the past, I think it's getting close to 8 or 9 years. I have to look at it again. I always forget, but it's coming up in this month, I think. And over the years, I have realized that again and again and again, that there are moments where I wish, as business Jeff, I had photos or documentation of particular projects. I wish that as like a creative and as like just a person, that I had those photos to show my friends or family. Or I would like to think in like 50 years time, when I'm looking back at my arts practice, I'm able to show the work that I did. And if I don't take any documentation, it's like I'm not going to be able to show anyone anything, and I'm just relying on what could be existing on social media, if it even exists in 50 years time. Like, will Instagram exist? Who knows? But I don't want to be reliant on anyone else to capture my work. And I want to capture it for myself because I'm really proud of it and I love it and it's a big part of who I am as a person. So that's how I really came at the idea of documenting my artworks through the lens of personal Jeff, creative Jeff, and business Jeff. Another part to that thought process is that obviously having a client-facing part to my arts practice, working with businesses and clients and companies and councils for my art, I realized I have to be able to show them what my work looks like in order for them to want to work with me. And without that, it's really hard for me to explain what I do. It's obviously a visual language. There's also a lot that goes into what you can capture through a video or photos. It's the vibe of what you go for. It's the playfulness. It's the way you talk about things. It's the way you present the video, the tone of it. There's so much that goes into it that represents you that can really help to sell you to a potential client or a potential customer as well, for them to buy into the world you're creating. And for me, really leaning in hard into this Jeff world experience is the way that I am wanting to create the experience of what it's like for someone to step into my world. Turning it into like this Jeff world playland is the easiest way for me to step into that creative Jeff and create new artworks or to come to the table as a creative. So thinking about the idea of having documentation for clients meant that I didn't want to just rely on having photos and videos of the artworks themselves, that the other part of documentation is also the story of the artwork and the connection to the artwork, not just the physical presence of it being there or existing. And I realized I really wasn't great, and I'm still not necessarily great at the storytelling part, but I'm getting better with every video that I make and every project that I document, and I'm developing those skills. And I think it's a really big part of being able to talk about your art. And there's a lot of opportunities to talk about a project. And my strategy includes a section that is all about finding the story of those artwork and what are all the potential ways that I could express my creativity through the stories of whatever the artwork is. So if we're thinking about the artwork that I'm making right now on the other side of the screen, there's me 2.5 years ago who, if I was making this artwork, potentially may have taken 1 or 2 photos through the painting process, and I would probably take a photo, if you're lucky, at the very end of the finished artwork before I hung it up in my house or tried to sell it at a market or whatever. So, 4 or 5 photos, maybe a video or 2, and that's kind of it. Now, with my strategy, when I sat down and decided I was going to make this artwork, there's a whole bunch more about the artwork that I could talk about that could really broaden the potential opportunity to bring more people into my world. I can share how I love to paint on cardboard, which is obvious, and how it helps me to be much more playful with the way that I draw and the concepts I come up with, and it is a really good way to prevent sort of creative block and pressures of that big white blank canvas effect of expensive materials. So there's that story. I could share how my inspiration from flowers and nature comes into my arts practice and sort of the symbolism behind flowers in my artworks. I could talk about how this is my attempt of trying to get back into sort of the fine arts side of my practice, which it is. It's me wanting... I always struggle with the idea of painting onto canvases and traditional like boards and things like that. It just doesn't really speak to me. It's an instant block that it doesn't feel right, but give me a sheet of cardboard and it feels really exciting to see what I'm going to transform it into. So I could really share the story about making my own cardboard canvases and what that's like. And there's even a lot of things a lot of thoughts I go through even whilst making artworks like this, going, is it as valuable as an artwork that's on canvas? Will people appreciate it? They probably won't. Maybe they will. Doesn't matter if they don't. Yes, but also I don't want that to be a massive thing. Like there's these cycles that you go through, and just using this artwork as the starting point to talk about that kind of experience as an artist, I think be really interesting and fascinating for people to hear. I could talk about the paints that I like to use or the paints that I don't like to use. I could talk about the concept of just the artwork itself and sort of what this represents. And there's also the fact that it exists as a digital version, like an iPad drawn fresco, drawn artwork that I'm now translating into a painted artwork. There's all the different ways of how I could turn this into different artworks going forward. Like the fact that it already exists as a painting and a digital artwork. And it's like, what if I slightly played with the style and did it in a different way? There's like so many things that I can pull out of this one artwork as conversation points, as an insight into my arts practice, as like a way to connect with other artists. And that's the really exciting part to documenting artworks, for me at least, or that was my entry point into realizing that it doesn't have to be this camera in the middle of the room, lock off and just like watch a time lapse of a video. And the final thing I needed to do before finalizing my strategy was to come up with where I wanted it to be presented and how I wanted to use this, whether it's photos or videos or whatever. And for me, the most important thing is my website. Being able to have my work visible on my website is critical because you just cannot rely on social media or any other apps to exist at any point. I could get hacked. The apps could just be no longer used. They could turn into something else. And so I never want to be reliant on a social media app for the archival sort of presence of my work for people to see. So always wanting to have my artworks archived on my website. I also wanted to have them archived for myself, like I said, to be able to look back on, so it's stored offline on my hard drive, and that was really important. And then I was going to focus on YouTube, so using YouTube as a way to create almost like a shell or a creative output of my work. So I put YouTube at the top of my social media focus, and everything from there trickles down to Instagram, LinkedIn, and I don't even do TikTok. And having this sort of like hierarchy of how everything was going to flow means that it has created a really easy way for me to have one project trickle out very organically into content that goes across different apps and social media stuff, which is a really good efficiency part to it. So after all of that, my strategy turned into was that I was going to document my artworks for myself foremost for archival purposes, and then they were going to be also used to help promote my art to my clients and potential clients. And I was going to focus on being able to have it on my website with a secondary sort of output through YouTube. And the next part of the strategy was that I had to work out the capacity of what I was going to do. I knew that I couldn't just document every single artwork that I ever make because I don't have the time, and I also just don't want to do that. I sometimes just want to make because I want to make. And so I decided that I was only ever going to document one artwork at a time as a bigger project. So if there was something that I really wanted to document, if I'm already making something, I would sort of put it next on the list. That just means that I don't overcommit to something that I can't do. And I also understand that can change week to week. So if I have a really busy time, it might take me longer to document a project, or if I've got no work happening, then maybe I might document an artwork in a really quick 1 or 2 weeks. But I'm getting a pretty good idea of what my capacity is, and by limiting it to one project, it's been a really good starting point for me to sort of find my feet on what I actually want that process to be. So that is how I pulled together my strategy and gave myself the intentions. Now it's the benefits of what I've seen from doing this for the past 2.5 years. The first benefit was that my mindset around my art and documentation obviously improved. And I'm actually making more personal projects now than I've ever made in the past. So because I felt like the process was really overwhelming before I had a strategy and set an intention, I just didn't do it. The hurdle felt too big. But as I started doing projects over the 2.5 years, that hurdle of, oh no, this is too hard and takes too much time, has slowly been chipped away at. And now it doesn't feel as daunting to start documenting a project. All I have to really do is just go, all right, finish this project, and then I can start on the next one and just sort of go from there. The projects themselves are also making me feel really energized because I am able to scratch the itch of sort of prototyping and playing within my practice and experimenting with things. The projects that I do want to document are less about creating these finished art pieces that are perfect and immaculate, and then more about experimenting with an idea and sort of coming up with a concept that I could still continue to further develop. And by setting that lower expectation of what the end result was going to be, just made it easier for me to again jump in and just start creating the work. Another way my mindset has changed is that I've become much more confident in my creative art self personally, and I'm wanting to lead with it more as well and not just rely on what I used to do or what I'm known for necessarily all the time. I'm actually a lot more interested now in sort of stepping out of what people expect that I'm going to make or what I'm known for making, and adding more different types of projects or skills to my tool belt and expanding on what I could put out there. So for a long time I was known for making cardboard jewelry, and I had to sort of get out of that headspace because I felt like that's all I was allowed to make because that's what people expected me to make. And then I moved on to the next thing, and I was really limited by just cardboard, and I went out and I did a bit of exploration of other materials for a little bit, and I've come back to cardboard, and now I'm wanting to really focus on this idea of prototyping and playing and the experimentation process with cardboard as the entry point for how people recognize my work. And so that sort of confidence has really helped me over the past 2 years, and I've seen a definite growth just from doing this documentation. The next thing is that I've actually gained paid work from doing these projects, as in I have been able to show photos and videos of the artworks that I've made through these YouTube videos to clients in meetings, on mood boards, or in just by sending them links to it, or doing a cold call email and being hey, this is what I've made, I think we could work together. I've been able to secure 3 paid projects from that, which is obviously a huge benefit because I need to pay rent, I need food on the table, I'm living as a full-time artist, and that is the purpose of this channel, is that I wanted to make art for myself that also could speak to clients and that could really grow my career and grow my audience and grow my clients as well. So that has been a huge benefit that I can only see continuing to evolve. Another benefit is that it's also really allowed me to develop my practice and grow the potential clients, which I guess does connect to the previous 2 in some way. So I used to really feel, like I said, stuck in one style and what I'm known for, and I've been able to evolve out of that. And it's not evolve out of what I used to be known for, but it's getting out of that mentality of thinking that I have to just keep creating the same thing and going back to the same well And there was definitely moments where, well, Mardi Gras rolls around and I always end up doing flowers for Mardi Gras and using similar visuals. And this year, for next year, I've really been working on how I can try and push some new kinds of ways that I could bring my art to like a Mardi Gras lens, because it's when I do get a lot of work and I want to feel like I'm always creating fresh new things. And these videos and this documentation is giving me the chance to explore new works, which I could then filter through to those kinds of client projects and times of year. So that's been a huge benefit. And I'm also having so much more of a healthier relationship with social media now as well. I'm no longer in that, like I said, hustle reactionary headspace. I'm being much more proactive. My content is now what I want to put out, and I'm not really following trends or working out what everyone's doing and doing my version of it. There's times where I will like tap into that just because I kind of want to, or it's like a trend that kind of speaks to me, but it rarely happens. So everything feels a lot more intentional now, which feels great. I also find that I have so much more content now than I ever had before. For instance, with a video that I make for YouTube, it will go onto my website, and I'm building out the different ways that I can put that project onto my website, not just the video, but maybe do some different galleries or things like that. But once I've done my video, I can usually get up to like 20 shorts out of a video, which I then will schedule in for the month. Those shorts can obviously turn into reels for Instagram. There's photos that could be carousels. I can then transfer a lot of those Instagram posts over to LinkedIn and sort of change the way that I present it, because my LinkedIn audience is much more client focused for me and has a different approach to or lens that the work is being seen through versus the everyday person on social media. So for one project, I could very easily have a month's worth, if not a month and a half or 2 months worth of content that could just sit there and be scheduled and sort of roll out over that time period. And that's not even including if I have other things that I want to post, if there's events I'm doing, if there's client projects I'm doing, like that is just a month's worth of content for one project. This like scarcity mindset really doesn't exist anymore, because I've got these stories that I'm talking about with the project as well. So I'm now exploring this idea of, once the video is done, going back and finding more inventive ways of telling those stories. For instance, for this video, the idea of like playing and working on cardboard, and the idea of not wanting to use a traditional canvas, is something that this artwork speaks to. And I might go off and create another reel or short that speaks to that idea and just explains it a little bit more. So yeah, I feel that like the quality is always there for the content, but I now just have a lot more quantity as well. Another point is that with every video, I'm making a system and building templates and processes that help me get better with each one, which is always a positive. And the final thing is, by flipping my attitude from that initial thought of chasing the algorithm and social media trends, it's allowed me to now focus on presenting my work fully from end to end, which I think is the biggest aha moment for me, is that there's so much more to an artwork than just the visual, physical object that hangs on the wall, that sits on the table next to you, that's on display. There's the story behind it, there's the inspiration about it, there's the materials that you used. It's like there's so many things that you can draw from it as story, and the potential for that has really sort of opened my eyes to a new way of looking at documenting my artworks. All right, and some final tips that I have for you. Work out what's manageable for you. So how much time, think about it in weekly to start with. That really helped me. Think about how much time in 1 week you're able to put towards documenting a project. For me, I was able to put 3 hours a week as like a trial, and I put it in outside of work hours. So it's like from 5 till 8 on a Thursday kind of thing. That just meant that no matter what, like usually client work can't impact it. And those 3 hours were spent every week on creating an artwork that I'm documenting. And then I started to understand that I kind of need a month for a project bare minimum. And so maybe for like 1 week, I'm planning it all out. Maybe the next week I'm making the artwork, or the next 2 or 3 weeks I'm making the artwork. Then there's another 2 weeks where I might be editing the content, and then there's another week for scheduling it. And at the end of each video, I then just sort of take note of like how much time that took, and I just like change it as much as I need to. But having this reoccurring automatic time block put in my schedule for this creative project that I want to document just means that it becomes like muscle memory, that I'm going to work on it, and it doesn't feel as like crazy and big. The next one is that I put all of my ideas in a book. This is my current book, and I just draw everything in there. And when it's time for me to do a project, I just pick out one from here, and it just feels really nice to have it in one spot, and I don't have to worry about forgetting about an idea. The next tip is, before starting an artwork, create a list of what you would like to document out of it. So what are the stories you want to pull from it? Do you want just photos? Do you want some videos? Do you want some behind the scenes stuff? Do you want some process? Do you want to show some sketches from your sketchbook? Is there an exhibition that's happening at the end of it? Is it a collaboration with someone else? Who is the other person you're working with? Do you want to do an interview with each other? What are all the stories that you could pull out of this project that you want to document, and where do you want that to sit? Is it on your website? Is it socials? Is it on your Substack as a blog? Is it a podcast? Is it like, where do you want it to be? And work out a full scope of, these are all the things I want to be able to capture, and it can become like a checklist for you to make sure that you are capturing that stuff. And the final point, which is so very fitting for me, is to label your files in order of your process. Instead of just labeling your file with 1 through to like whatever, 50, I find it really helpful to break everything up into stages, and to then number the stages as well. So for this video where I'm making this artwork, and I might name it 1 intro, and there might be 2 cutting cardboard, 3 painting cardboard, 4 gluing cardboard, 5 hanging up at home. And so they're like the 5 stages of creation. So for the painting section, I have maybe like 10 different videos of the painting stages. So I will then number those as well to keep them in order. So it would be 3 painting cardboard 1, 3 painting cardboard 2, 3 painting cardboard 3, working my way down. That way, 1, when I'm editing the videos, everything is in order in the file, and I just pull out the next chunk and edit the next chunk, then move on to the next part, edit the next chunk. 2, it makes it really easy to see what you're looking at. And if I want to go back and find content from like 3 videos ago, it's really easy to just work out through the process what kind of video I want to pull from it. And 3, I think it's just really good like admin skill to have, is to like feel like you are on top of everything. It's like a mindset thing. It's like a mini win when you like organize everything and you feel like you're in control and that nothing feels overwhelming. There's nothing worse than trying to edit a video and clicking through all the videos to find the right one that you're trying to add into the timeline. So it's just like a really good starting point. And with that, I'm finished. And that is a bit of an insight into how I document my artworks and how I approach creating work for myself. I hope it's been valuable to hear and interesting and potentially helpful if it's something that you kind of feel stuck with. And I guess the one disclaimer is that this is just one way of approaching it. It's not the way. You could take a little bit out of this, you could take nothing out of this, and there might be something you think is not great and you do it better. And like, I love that for you. If you would love to share it, I'm always happy to hear about people's ways of doing things and learning from each other. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, comments, feelings, tips that you want to share, feel free to put them in the comment section below. If you think this could be helpful to someone, I would love if you could share it with someone. That would be great. Bring them over here. If you're not already following, I'd love for you to follow. If you want to see more videos like this, I'm also on Instagram as well and LinkedIn. The details for those are down the bottom, and I'll put my Instagram here somewhere. But yeah, other than that, hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye.